You're listening to the Spare No Arrows podcast, a show that equips Christians to stand against our anti-Christian culture. My name's Cody Lawrence, and I'm here to discuss culture, politics, theology, and building Christendom for the glory of God with courage, biblical truth, and sound doctrine. Yeah, the other thing that made me think of is Tash from the last battle in Narnia, where it's essentially the god of Islam, Allah. It's essentially what it is, and it's this like huge, terrifying demon bird god. And what happens in the book, I'm also minimizing the spoilers for people who haven't read the last battle. You gotta read C.S. Lewis.
I do. I gotta read this.
Have you read the last battle?
No, I should have, but I did not. I gotta.
Shameful.
I know.
So anyway, I mean, this like that hideous strength and the last battle, really all of Narnia, perfectly mirrors a lot of the stuff we're dealing with today. Really everything through all of Narnia, not just the last battle. But in the last battle, what happened was there's essentially a false Christ figure. There's a false Aslan, and it's really obvious that it's a false Aslan to the really faithful people. Just like today, like the false Christ that these people are proclaiming, he's called Jesus. They call him Jesus. They call him Christ. They say Christ is king. But we know that thing you're talking about, that's a fake. That's not Jesus. Whenever what was it? Nick Fuentes said something like Christ is king, and then called somebody the N-word.
Yes. Yep. Yeah.
But it's like that thing you're worshiping is not Christ. You're calling it Christ, and that is exactly what happens in the last battle. And a lot of good Narnians end up being deceived by this. And it gets to the point where the Calormenes are this other, essentially this like desert people, like Muslims essentially, and they're the other big enemy away from Narnia, and they worship this god called Tash, and there is influence from their people that starts to impact like one of the leaders that's kind of manipulating the character who's playing Aslan, the fake Aslan, and then he convinces the people to start calling him Tashlan, which is a combination of Aslan and Tash. So it's like we start by saying Christ. I think I forgot who it was, if it was Michael O'Fallon or somebody posted this, but it was like, I can't find the tweet anymore, but it's like they start by saying things like Christ is king, and then they slowly inch away from that, and then it will eventually get into Odin worship. And then Joel Berry found that Odin comment from Grok. So it's like that is identical to what's happening. It's also identical to what's happening, what happened in the last battle.
People progress with their views. Like, we're going to see a lot of people on the woke right, just as we saw in Nazi Germany. They began to deny Christianity because they were so obsessed with de-Judaizing everything that eventually that leads to Christianity is a form of Judaism. Like Hitler thought Paul was a heretic. He did not like Paul. He started being very supportive of Christianity. He called himself a Christian. We were saying we're on your side, Christians, and then it went the other way. Yeah, just like politics do, and people miss this about politicians. They think, like you watch a Hitler speech. Oh, he said he was a Christian, and I'm like, dude, how can you be so stupid? He's a politician. When Joe Biden says I'm a Catholic, do you think he's a good Catholic? Of course, when he said things, when Kamala Harris says, mentions the name God, oh, she's a Christian. We just take her at her word. Look, she said it. Right. It's like, how can you not understand that this is what politicians do? Yeah. And it's an interesting thing, just talking about eschatology, because when you study the Antichrist or the beast of Revelation, whether you're a preterist or not, it really is a Christian deception. And what I mean by that, Paul says he sits in the temple of God. He says, I'm God. So he doesn't say, I'm Lucifer. He doesn't say I hate God. He says I am God. He gets you to think he's God. It's a very Christian deception that takes place, and people, they fail to realize that Satan comes as an angel of light. And again, like evil, and I said this multiple times, evil justifies itself. It has a justification. This is why when you read every kind of genre out there, like C.S. Lewis's book, trilogy, Lord of the Rings, Ra's al Ghul, Thanos, Anakin, they all have justifications, and nobody thinks they're evil. Yeah. They're thinking the ends justify the means, and I'm on a mission, and I'm on a righteous mission. You don't understand it, and I just got to do these things because the end, again, will justify the means. They're self-deceived, and Satan has his own story. I'm sure Satan thinks that God is evil and he's in the right.
Sure.
And people just fail to see that as if evil is explicit. It's not. That's why it's called a deception and a temptation. I remember there were multiple people who were trying to defend, the woke right from saying Christ is king. And again, we weren't saying you can't say that, and that's not a truthful statement. Amen.
Right.
Of course, Christ is king all day long. We're just saying you're blaspheming God when you follow it up with, as Nick, Fuentes,
Yeah.
N word. That's
Yeah.
evil. And God has a command: don't take my name in vain. That's what we're saying. We're saying they're misusing His name for
Yeah.
sin.
Yeah. We're
And
saying
honestly,
blasphemy is bad.
like, dude, if you're on X, like you're all seeing the same kind of feed. The people who are just like, trying to come after us and make out like we're saying you can't say Christ is king, dude, you're being ridiculous. You see
Yeah.
it, you just don't want to see it. A lot of these people are just they're ignorant, but they're willfully ignorant because it's hard to admit that the people that fought with you against leftism, your friends, are now fallen for a lie. It's sad. It really is a tragedy. And it's easier to just go along with these guys and rub shoulders rather than have them sick their anons on you
Yeah.
because you don't
Yeah.
want to get ratioed.
I don't want to think they're all evil.
Yeah.
That's it, I mean, I want to. Like, part of me is like, all these people are bad, whatever. They're idiots. But I know a lot of them are deceived. I feel like the people who are the leaders, they're the really bad ones.
Oh yeah.
Because they are either they're malicious or they're so deceived to the point where they really just think they're doing the right thing, and they're leading thousands of young men astray. Who and the young men are like, oh, these people have built up their reputability because they did the right thing for COVID and or whatever it is. And ironically, people like Joel Webben didn't. Like he met outside and they all wore masks for way too long until eventually he saw that, like, oh, I will get more attention if I do this, if I stop wearing masks. So I think it's all just influenced by wanting to be popular or to get clicks
Yeah.
or whatever.
Not to change this subject, but this is interesting because I like talking about this stuff too.
Mm,
Speaking of C.S. Lewis space trilogy, we talked about this a little bit pre-show. Do you think
yeah.
we went to the moon?
Oh,
Like I said, totally changing the subject on here, but this is an interesting talk.
yeah, I think that's interesting. So I think that this is an interesting can of worms because I have a principle that I don't trust the government, right?
Yeah,
I think we are lied to about a lot of history. And I think if we take that principle too far and we say what the woke right says, where they lie to us about everything,
yeah,
then that leads to Holocaust denial. And so what I want to do is really analyze every individual thing I believe and throw out the things that I know are false only after I realize that they're false. So, like, that what we learned about Abraham Lincoln, a lot of it's not true. What we learned about Martin Luther King, a lot of it's not true. And so um, I don't just want to, like a lot of these people are doing, throw out everything and say, like, oh, it's all bad, it's all bad. I'm going to like Hitler just because whatever the opposite is of what I learned in school must be true. And so the moon landing is in that weird space where it's like, I don't know. It seems like that is, I really would not be surprised at all if the government lied about it. I've seen a lot of interesting videos where some of it seems unlikely, or it seems like, oh yeah, that might have been faked. But then I've seen other evidence where it's like, oh yeah, that doesn't seem faked at all. So I'm kind of
yeah.
open minded about that.
Yeah, so I'm not a flat earther. I've had a friend who's tried to convince me for years, and I don't believe it. I
Yeah, flat Earth
do.
is another one of those things. It's like if
Yeah,
they lie to us about everything, then you have to be a flat earther
yeah. I do
and a
believe the Earth is
Holocaust.
a globe. I do believe, and that just let maybe the audience know. I do think there's reason to doubt. Like when people talk about give people the benefit of the doubt. Like people who say we didn't go to the moon. I don't look at them like they're crazy. Like I understand
Sure.
where they're coming from. It's like,
Yeah.
like you're not wrong to question things. Even flat earthers, they're not wrong to question.
I would look at a flat earther like they're crazy, but I wouldn't look at a moon landing denier like they're crazy.
Yeah. Like well, basically like yeah, it's right to think I haven't seen the earth as a globe and then study that. Like I commend them for wanting to verify things. Obviously again, I'm not a flat earther. I don't believe
Sure.
I believe the earth is a globe.
But would you say the same thing about the Holocaust? Like, oh, it's commendable to say the Holocaust never happened if they're willing to do the research or whatever.
Um, well, so I believe the Holocaust happened, and I believe it's
Sure.
stupid to deny it, and therefore you
Right.
should believe it.
Well, just like
And I,
flat Earth, but would you give the same amount of grace to a Holocaust denier as you would to a
no, and
flat
here,
earther?
yeah, good question. And no, here's why: because the Holocaust is actually really easy to figure out.
Well, I think a flat Earth is really easy to figure out. Like,
well, yeah,
obviously, the
it
Earth is
is, but it's like it's almost
round. I
too.
see them as exactly the same amount of crazy.
Well, it's
Or if
almost
not, I mean, but I do agree with you. I think the Holocaust is probably worse.
yeah, like it's almost like too easy to figure out that it happened. Like that's why people are like, oh, this shouldn't be a standard of like truth. It's like, dude, it's so easy to figure out that the Holocaust happened. Like it doesn't take like 10,000 hours, as one pastor said, to study it. But with flat Earth, like I understand, where they're coming from. It's like, yeah, okay, NASA lies about everything. See, here's the thing that gets me with the moon
We have
landing.
photographs from space of the Earth spinning, though. I mean, that's
Well, see what they'll argue is where they'll get you at, and this is why some people fall for it because on the surface level, it sounds if you never question it before, like it's kind of like dealing with the Roman Catholic. They'll throw these questions at you.
yeah,
If you never dealt with it before, it might trip you up. Like, how do you know the Bible that you have is the 66 books of the Bible, or are they actually the Word of God?
yeah,
And like Protestants, like, oh yeah, how do I know that? So they'll get tripped up over this. So
sure,
they'll trip you up and they'll say, Cody, those images are composite or generated by like AI. We don't
sure.
actually have a full picture of the globe, and that's true. We don't have it. The reason why is because you can't. It takes you really got to get far out there to take a picture of the Earth.
Well, but we have so normal. I mean, well, I'm not arguing with you about flat Earth, but
Yeah, yeah, that's okay. I'm
but
not a flat.
th-
Yeah,
there are reasons for the like our satellite images. They just don't have the field of view to capture the entire
exactly,
Earth because they're so close to orbit. But we do have pictures of Earth now from farther out, from things that have launched like to Mars. The lander that went to Mars shot back a picture of Earth, and then even those composite images, like you can do math and realize that like the slices of them add up to a spherical image anyway. But yeah, I think I don't want to give those people grace because I think that is as or more moronic than Holocaust denial. And if I'm not going to give Holocaust deniers grace, I mean, and that doesn't mean like I want to excommunicate somebody for just asking questions, quote unquote, if in
yeah,
fact they really are just asking questions.
exactly.
I think actually, so that made me think people are going to be flat earthers because they're really stupid. People are likely to be Holocaust deniers because they hate Jews. So
Exactly. That's the
that
difference.
kind of makes Holocaust denial worse. That's interesting. I think they're equally stupid and they're equally easy to prove that they really happened. But
Yes.
I think, yeah, the motivation, you're not going to be a flat earther because you hate a entire race of people.
That's why I'll give more grace to the flat earther because
Interesting. Okay.
it's
So I'm
usually
with you there at least.
because it's like just asking questions. Like 95% of the time, they're not asking questions,
Right.
and that's what what I'm looking for. Like
A
like
flat
someone
earther
came to
might
me,
actually be dumb enough to really believe in flat earth
like if
without
somebody
being
comes to
hateful
me, exactly, like somebody comes to me and be like,
about
is genuinely asking questions about the Holocaust. Great, let's study it. Like, just like in social justice, I wanted people study communism, look at
yeah.
communism, here's the facts, because I believe when you do it, you'll see how evil it is, and like, that lie that communism will work this time. No, it hasn't worked. Study it. Look, here's the facts. But the problem
Yeah.
is, majority of people in 2020, they weren't just asking questions, and the same, is true for the people on the woke right. They're not asking questions. Maybe if you get a stupid person who falls for the flat earth, it's like, okay, I'll try to walk you through it. I'll give you my take on it, and we can sit down and talk about it. He's less of a harm to my congregation versus the guy who's like, the Holocaust didn't happen, I'm going to spread my lies, and you should listen and
Sure.
tune into these podcasters, and that
Yeah.
leads to grok and Odin worship.
So the
um
the clip of the day is Holocaust denial is worse than flat earthers.
but
It's
we're gonna get
true.
clipped and reamed out. Yeah. But yeah, it is stupid. But going back to the moon landings, the thing that gets me is why haven't we been back? And either it's because it goes to show you how stupid our government is and corrupt, or we actually don't have the technology to go there. Um,
Yeah.
and so that's
Yeah.
where I
When
think is reason to doubt.
when we heard NASA over the past few years say something like, now, well, okay, let me back up. So NASA a couple years ago, I think when Elon Musk was building his rockets or started building his rockets, NASA was like, well, it just takes so many resources. We just can't get back to the moon. We did it once and it just took so much. But technology's better now and it's easier to, whatever, you can do the calculations better. But the funny thing is, it's like, if you think NASA lies about it, if you think they lied about the moon landing, why would you think they're telling the truth about that? So it's like you're choosing to believe them where they're like, yeah, well, we can't go again. But it's like you don't believe them. If you think they're a liar, don't believe anything they say. And so you just say like any information that comes from NASA is totally false.
Yeah, that is true. I think I might have
Inconsistent.
even said that in the past to my one friend who's a flat earther. It's like, well, why do you believe him over here? Because yeah, they do that. They do pick and choose their evidence.
Yeah.
Where exactly to your point, Cody, it's like, yeah, they'll make a claim. Oh, this is true. Look, they said it, but then they'll make a claim over here. Oh, that's not true. They're liars or Satanists. So it's like, well, which is it?
If they're liars, you have to believe that they're a liar consistently.
You do,
or,
yeah,
or have really good reason as to why this is a lie and that's the truth. But but
you do,
usually what people do is just, oh well, that fits my narrative, so that must be the truth.
yeah. And just for the record, I actually do believe we did go to the moon. I just recognize there's room to doubt, and the thing that just makes me doubt is why haven't we been back, and why isn't Elon Musk uh
Sure.
or I don't know, not talking about, but why hasn't he went there if if he's a private enterprise guy, because that's why he started SpaceX to go to Mars, which is very very cool when you
Yeah,
think about it.
and we have a lander on Mars now. That's cool, but
Yeah,
no
and
people yet. But I would just assume, because like why would we go to the moon? Because it's cool. Like why would you want to spend billions of dollars to get people to the moon who are probably going to die because some machine's going to mess up, just to like put a flag on the moon? That's kind of silly to me. It's
well, I think
cool. It's cool
yeah.
as heck, but it's kind of silly.
Well, I think we can set up a base there. If I had the money, we should set up a base there, and then we should go from there to Mars, or just set up a base.
Oh, that would be interesting.
That
Okay,
would be
that
so
would
cool to
be a
have a
reason to go
base
to the moon.
on the moon. I think Obama, by the way, that was one of his plans for NASA, to put a moon to set up a moon base when he first came into office. Believe it or not.
Interesting.
I mean, that satisfies my, the kid in me, the like the sci-fi kid in me
Yeah,
is like, the space trilogy, right? Like I love space. I've studied it in the past. I'm an amateur at it, but I love space. So I would really love if we can put a moon base on there and then go to Mars and explore,
that'd be
because
sweet.
that is just, dude, space is breathtaking. It's amazing how vast it is.
Something that C.S. Lewis makes a point of in in the space trilogy
Yeah,
is that he really doesn't like the word space.
really.
He called it the cosmic trilogy, and then when it was republished, people started calling it the space trilogy. Other people call it the ransom trilogy, but I like cosmic trilogy. But he says space. So like back in medieval times, they thought, they called it the heavens. Anything above the sky
Hmm.
was the heavens. And the heavens, because they were the heavens, they're full of life. It's not empty, but it's full of angels, and the stars are like angels. The stars are angels. There's even an example of in Narnia, there was a character who is like a retired star. The star was retired, and so then he
Oh,
came to live in Narnia out the rest of his life. So like stars are beings; they have some sort of like spiritual capacity to them, and that's what the Bible even has a
yeah, it
lot to
does.
say about stars. But so the medievals, they believed the stars were spiritual beings and the heavens are full of angels, whatever. And now we have space. After the Enlightenment, we just have space. And C.S. Lewis was seeking to fix that, to be like, space is not just empty, but it's full of life. Another really interesting thing that the medieval people believed was the Earth. So they believed in a geocentric model where the
Yep.
Earth is the center of the universe. And so I always kind of heard that, and I thought, oh, that's kind of selfish, where you think we're the center of the universe. But they didn't think of it that way at all. They thought being the center of the universe was a very lowly position, because they believed the farther out you go, the closer you are to God. And so the earth, because it's at the center, and hell therefore is at the center of earth.
Mm.
So the closer you are to the center of the universe, the farther you are away from God. And
Huh.
that's a fascinating thought to me.
That is interesting. Do you think it's possible that there's life on other planets? I'm asking you all the weird questions. I'm like
Ye-
going down the list.
Yeah, I think like the stuff I'm also into the paranormal. I think a lot of the stories we hear about paranormal experiences are really interesting, and I think some of them are like 99% of them are falsifiable, like ghosts and UFO sightings and stuff like that. But there's like 1% that they seem to be real physical um, entities of some sort, and people are really having these verifiable experiences in a very small percentage of the situations. And so it's like there is something. And so my opinion is that like the UFOs and stuff, they're demonic because they
Same.
usually lead people to
Yeah.
like
Wacky stuff.
people have experiences where aliens take the suck them up out of their rooms and probe them and stuff,
Yep.
and they always come back with like weird religious experiences where the aliens are like, actually we're from an alien race and Jesus was a member of our alien
Yes.
race and
Yep.
whatever. So it always like pulls them away from Christianity, and so I want to think all that stuff's demonic. But is there life on other planets that we never have experienced and maybe never will experience until the new heavens and new earth? I am totally open to the possibility. So uh
That's very interesting because
yeah.
yeah, so like how would Romans 8 talks about the creation, the cosmos, or the katisios is a Greek word, and I totally butchered that Greek word. But Paul talks about the creation is fallen.
Yeah.
So in C.S. Lewis's trilogy, it sounds like he's referring to the moon is that marker by which is our area, and then beyond that, that wouldn't be fallen. Is that
No, okay. So actually in the cosmic trilogy, when we when Adam and Eve sinned, the whole cosmos was messed up.
okay?
And so even the unfallen places have death. So like death entered into the universe and kind of messed stuff up, even though the creatures themselves are unfallen. Like the creatures don't sin. And I think in the book in when they go to Mars, there are stories of like every now and then there might be a sinful creature, but in general, all of the races are sinless. But still they do see the cosmic effects of the fall. So that's really interesting.
Okay, so yeah, but they're not guilty of actual sin.
Right.
Is that it?
Right.
Interesting. Okay, so I
They
guess you
do
would consider.
die. They die, and so they are punished for our sin on earth. But like demons and actual evil spiritual influence is locked into earth.
Wow. Okay,
Yeah. But
because
the fall extends past earth to the whole
ah
cosmos.
because I do believe with you that like when people talk about these UFOs, I do believe um people are seeing something. Like there's actually things in the air flying around that aren't
Sure.
man made, but I do think they're demons.
And they seem to be disobeying the laws of physics,
Yep,
which is a
exactly.
really
Like
interesting thing.
like you just can't do that. Like they're going so fast that if you take a turn, your body wouldn't move, so your body would slam against the
Yeah.
wall and just burst. So these things are breaking the laws of physics,
Yeah.
and they seem to have one thing in common. It's very mystical, spiritual. Where a lot of these go down this esoteric route, where again, like Jesus is, oh, I'm for Jesus, and he's somewhat of like a hippie. And the correlation, the common denominator is again, these are demonic beings impersonating UFOs.
Yeah.
That we really do live in a world that's uh lack of a better word, magical or Narnia like.
I
And
love it. Yeah, I
yeah,
totally agree. Yeah,
like there are
magic
things out
is
there.
totally real.
It is, yeah, but, like, due to the Enlightenment, like, we don't believe in that, but, like,
Yeah.
everybody believed that. Like, you go through the book of Exodus, where Moses was dealing with the Pharaoh and his musicians, um, they didn't the Bible never denied that they were able to not imitate, but do those dark arts. Like,
Yeah.
they were able to get, what was it? Like, their rods to go into snakes too,
Yeah, and
I
Moses did
believe.
the same thing. His was just bigger. You see a lot of like kid
Yeah,
stories or retellings of that story, and they're fake snakes, or they like do sleight of hand and like they hide their staff, or it's like a collapsible staff, and they throw a snake out of their sleeve. But that's not what the Bible describes. The Bible says their staves really turned into snakes. They were really
yeah.
doing magic, and then Moses's magic was just better.
Isn't that so interesting when we look at the pyramids, right? Like, how do they build these things?
Yeah.
But then you look at like in Exodus where the Egyptians were able to do these dark arts. The Bible doesn't deny it; it affirms it.
Yeah.
So I do believe there was something most definitely linked to these pyramids that not just in Egypt, but in various parts of the world. I would even tie that into the fall of when the angels came down. I don't know if you take the view, but I do believe they came down physically. They had
Yeah.
relations with women. They taught them things like the Book of Enoch goes into this. And this is the world we live in today, but we're just blind and arrogant to it, due to our post enlightenment.
Yeah, and I think that one the obvious response that most people would have to that is, well, I don't see magic around us. I don't see people turning their sticks into snakes and all that. And I think there's a very interesting argument to be made. And this also seems to be what C.S. Lewis believes. And if you read That Hideous Strength, this kind of plays out where he talks about magic and kind of like also like in Narnia, the longer that Narnia exists, the weaker the magic becomes and the slower the magic is. So like when Narnia was first created, everything was very fast and magic was everywhere, but just over time it kind of dissipates. And
It's
it's also
entropy.
kind of like in actually the same exact thing happened in Lord of the Rings, where the elves, whenever in the Silmarillion, whenever the world was first created, everything was magical. Elves and dwarves were created. Elves are super magical, very powerful. But over thousands of years, the elves' magic is slowly dissipating as they're away from their homeland of Valinor, and
Mm.
that's why they have to return to Valinor in Lord of the Rings, because they're all going to die if they don't go back to Valinor because they're losing their magic powers. And so anyway, all that to say is, I think if you also look at medieval like history of magic and stuff like that, there seems to be some like actual weird stuff that a lot of people could do, and people really can't do that stuff anymore. There might be like very small examples of weird like actual effective witchcraft, but the vast majority of witchcraft, if you can even call it that we have today, is like the stupid crystal books that you find at Barnes and Noble. It's like it's fake. It's fake stuff. They're pretending, but and that's what they call magic, but that's not real magic. But real magic. It seems like maybe magic was stronger than it is now, and now it's not a thing anymore.
That's very interesting because that would be following the laws of entropy.
Yeah,
This
yeah,
world is dying due to the fall, so things are getting weaker and weaker.
yeah.
As we age, Earth is aging with it. So that is a pretty interesting take. I wonder, I wonder if C.S. Lewis and Tolkien just sat down and talk about theology a lot
I'm
related to
sure.
these
Oh yeah,
issues.
for sure. So, Tolkien was really upset that C.S. Lewis didn't become a Catholic. So they, yeah, they would talk about theology quite a bit. And they were both, well, C.S. Lewis at least was a scholar of medieval literature, so he was super informed on that stuff. And I'm sure Tolkien, I forgot what Tolkien, his education exactly was in, but I'm sure he knew a tremendous amount about medieval literature too.
Okay, yeah, I knew they were friends and they talked a lot about things, but I wonder how much they got into their actual theology because there was, seeing that similarity.
Yeah,
I knew that myself that Lord of the Rings was like that too, like the elves were dying.
yeah,
The magic was fading, but I never actually thought of it in that regard with the world. And then, yeah, that is actually probably a good point because, like, the deeper you dig into history, things are very mythical.
yeah,
Even in the Bible, like Genesis 1 through 11 is very. It sounds like it's very mythical,
yeah,
like angels coming down, procreating giants,
yeah.
floods. Going to Exodus, this where now it's like there seems to be loss on that. I mean, it could also just be the devil, switching up his tactics. Like why control us with magic when he's doing it with our phones?
Sure. Yeah,
So
and there are interesting examples. It seems like um, people verify, like of the verifiable paranormal experiences that people have, they do seem to happen more often in um, more superstitious places. And we would think like, oh well, superstitious people would just expect to have these experiences. Except a lot of these experiences are actually that 1% of verifiable experiences. And the reason that I think that happens is because Satan doesn't need to tempt us secular city people with UFOs, but if he can tempt those superstitious country folk or people in other countries with supernatural experiences to pull them away from God, that's actually more effective for them. When if like the secular world, city people who don't believe in the supernatural at all, were to have a supernatural experience, that might actually tempt them to believe in God. So Satan should just be hands off for like paranormal experiences with most secular people.
Yeah, exactly. He switches up his tactics.
Yeah, but I think there is an element in the Bible of like things were bigger and more fantastical back then, and that I think leads a lot of people to think like, well, the Bible's just being more poetic and metaphorical and whatever. But like, I don't have a problem at all now. I used to be very like evidentialist and like not a literal 7-day creation. And I believed a lot of things that I don't believe now. I take a much more literal approach to the Bible, and I'm also not like angry about it like a lot of other literalists are, or like 7-day creationists. I think it like I'm totally cool saying like dragons used to exist and they don't anymore.
Oh yeah, there's probably evidence for that too. Giants would definitely existed.
Sure.
There's too much universal knowledge on that as well.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
all these
I'm
common.
totally cool with all that, because if we deny the existence of that kind of stuff, it's really easy for us to deny things like a global flood. And if we're denying that, then we can deny that God created the earth, the universe in 7 days. And then if we deny that, then we could say, well, God doesn't even have to exist at all. The Bible's just metaphorical, and we can use it because it's a good life lesson book or something like that.
Well, even Second Peter, where it talks about how the world was created out of water and by water,
Yeah.
and you look at Genesis, where there was chaos and water, and then the sun existed. Sorry, the earth existed prior to the sun. Like all these crazy things are like there's so much that we just don't know. That sounds insane. Of what that actually looked like, and just trying to imagine what went down. It's totally against the grain of what we're taught to believe about our current world. And
Yeah.
it reflects it too. Like look at our architect. It's so ugly. Like we have no beauty anymore because we despiritualize. Like church is not holy anymore because
Yeah.
we brought in this, this again, this enlightenment where the world is not magical. The world is not God's world where there are things like angels and giants coming down and Nephilim and God speaking the world into existence, creating it out of water. It's just all just rational and just bland. And it's like, well, then we live in a bland world then. And we do, we live in an ugly, in America, at least our architect is very ugly and just, we're surrounded by just blandness.
Yeah. Yeah. And that I think is really, it's conducive to really oppressing us with this enlightenment thinking, where in reality, the world is still very magical.
Mm.
Spiritual, both good and evil forces are active constantly all around us. It's not space, it's the heavens, and they are full of activity. So like all of this, I think, can make us like I'm a happier person once I started like seeing the beauty and the magic in the world around us that really does exist. And also that leads me to be a lot more comfortable with like yeah, there really are like evil, there are demons out there doing stuff. And I think one of the things that a demon can easily do is influence, to circle back around, artificial intelligence. And like what we know, so like there, because we don't interact like that, we don't actually program the AI to do specific things. It kind of just does what it does based off of stimuli. That to me seems like a really ripe spot for some spiritual activity to kind of turn people in this direction of this Hitler worship.
Yeah, it's and the whole thing is just crazy too because that's another thing I would not have predicted either that people would go down that route.
Yeah.
It was totally just unforeseeable. Like it was easier for me to accept leftists going after communism than it was for me to accept people in my own circles going after
Yeah,
Hitler.
it's like people are getting stupider and stupider. If there is a one of the best arguments against postmillennialism, I think, is people like Joel Webben. Just the fact that pastors can exist and people can get so stupid. Now that doesn't actually make me doubt postmillennialism. It's partially a joke, but it's like it's shocking that people can so easily fall into awful, egregious, stupid sin. But we read the Exodus and how it's like you Moses was literally away from you guys for 40 days, and you melted down all your jewelry and you made a cow and you started worshiping it, you losers. But it's like, now we're praising
Well,
Hitler.
if those were Germans, that wouldn't have happened, Cody.
Yeah, well, if exactly, if we were Germans from the James White Corey Mahler debate, so stupid, so stupid.
Dude, what arrogant. You know what I was thinking of too? Where Paul mentions in First Corinthians, I think somewhere in First Corinthians, how the things that happened to the Jews serve as examples for us and not fall into the same kind of sins and error.
Right,
Then Paul goes on in First Corinthians 10 saying, "Therefore, he who thinks he stand, take heed lest he fall." Meaning, don't be arrogant towards the branches, thinking you're better than them. And like,
right.
we have fools out there like Corey Mahler. If the German people were there, that never would have happened. It's like, dude, how could you be so arrogant?
Yeah. Yeah, the world is a crazy place. It's also an interesting place, and demons are all over the place. And Corey Mahler's one of them. And a lot of these
Yeah.
leaders are who are deceiving thousands of poor, gullible young men. Are they're demonic themselves? It's
And
crazy.
to be clear, I put Joel Webben in the same category as Maller. I know that seems
Sure.
harsh,
Me
but
too.
there's like, what's the difference? Right now, and we're just as Joel Webben released a video saying like Nick Fuentes was right, we're tired of saying that he's going to do
Yeah,
it with Corey
they're
Mahler.
fighting on the same team.
Yeah, it's like,
Corey
come on.
Mahler's willing to be a lot more crazy on text, but they're both fighting on exactly the same team.
Exactly. Like, there's no differences between the two anymore. And pastors, it's I noticed on X, it's easy for big names to call out Corey Mahler, 'cause, like, that's the easy dog to pick
Yeah,
a fight with.
yeah,
But it's like,
yeah.
dude, why don't you go
Especially
towards these
now.
guys?
But right,
Yeah,
yeah. So we should still be calling out these other people, even when it's still a little bit harder to, because we have to realize they really are fighting on the same team. If they're not, like, a shepherd's job, and you're a shepherd, if your church, or if there is a prevalent cultural sin that is bleeding into your church and your flock is in danger, as a good shepherd, if wolves are just on the edges of the forest, a good pastor has to protect his flock against the things that they're actually in danger of. And so like if your church is all like far right, um like really solid right wing people, wokeness isn't really an issue for them. Feminism isn't really an issue. So if you spend all your time talking about how evil feminism is, it's like you're actually just stroking their egos. You're not giving them hard truths, but you're giving them something that they want to hear that's not actually what they need to hear. What they need to hear is the sins that they're actually threatened with, which is this neo-Nazi crap.
Oh yeah, 100%. Because Paul, I mean, just look at Paul, as one example. Paul constantly called people out, and he used names like Hymenaeus,
Yes.
Alexander. Demas has forsaken me.
And we
Like,
should be doing exactly the same thing.
and I always like to point out too, like, the book of Galatians, Paul Paul wrote a letter about the apostle Peter. Well, one, he publicly rebuked Peter to his face publicly around everybody. Then he wrote a letter about it, and then he sent that letter out so people can read and hear all about it.
And it's in the Bible, and billions of people have read it through history. Like, how embarrassing it's going to be.
Right? Can you imagine if you did a sin, or if somebody you knew did a sin close to you, you publicly rebuked him, you
Yeah.
write a letter, send it out and circulate to everybody,
Yeah.
and then we have people being like, "Oh, you can't call these brothers out, you're slandering the brethren." It's like, dude, you would have hated Paul if he did this time, right?
Right. Yeah. Oh boy. Yeah. It's like it's the same people who were saying, like, oh, you can't attack these people, are the same people who were saying we should be naming names when it comes to Big Eva. Like, it's all
Yeah.
hypocrisy. We mentioned other examples of hypocrisy where it's like you have to be consistent. If you have some kind of principle that you live by, you can't just stop living by it when it's convenient.
Well, even like how there's people now who are currently like going after what is it? Matt Chandler or David no David Platt. I was like, yeah, I
Well,
get David Platt's a wolf and so is Matt Chandler. And I called him out, but I'm like,
yeah.
who honestly needs to be told this right now? I feel like the people who are still listening to David Platt are just always going to be listening to David Platt.
Yeah.
Like if you haven't seen the David Platt and Matt Chandler are wolves, there's like, I can't help you anymore.
Sure.
But there's some people on the right who are still calling them out as if they're being courageous,
Yeah.
like you were. But dude, now it's time to call out the people like Joel Webben.
And
Like,
right.
come
And you
on.
could, I think there are different stations that people can find themselves in. And David Platt and Matt Chandler still have enormous congregations, and they still have their tendril. Like David Platt still has his tendrils. I guess Matt Chandler too in the SBC. And so like they do need to be called out, but in the sphere that I am finding myself in now, they're not a threat. But that doesn't mean
Exactly.
they're not a threat in general. Like there are there are people who spend time criticizing people that I never even think about, and that's cool. Like if they're real threats to somebody and you're really reaching those people, then it's good to call those people out. But yeah, I think if you're calling out those people and you're in a church where people follow Corey Mahler, that's a mistake. If you're spending all your time criticizing Matt Chandler and your church has multiple people who think Hitler wasn't that bad, that's the mistake.
Even your follower base too, I would
Yeah,
say.
yeah,
But,
absolutely.
but they know that, right? Because the moment you go down that route, you're gonna lose so many of your followers.
Yeah, and what we see of
So
Jesus is, and they're like guilt by association. You can't criticize me by who follows me, whatever. It's like, well, I actually you can, because you attract like if a bunch of neo Nazis followed me, I there would be something wrong with me. Yeah, you, you should be like,
yeah,
hey Cody, what's with all these weirdos following you that are like you? They really
yes.
love all your content, huh? That's weird. Jesus was followed by various stripes of people, and he regularly said stuff that they didn't consider very Christ-like, and so they left him. Jesus Christ they thought acted unchristlike, and so like Jesus had followers who left him all the time. He didn't care, and so neither should we. And we should be intentionally trying, no matter where we are, we should intentionally try to tell the people that we have influence over the things that they need to hear, and not the things that get us more followers.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's like if these guys are finding a home in my camp, what is it in my message that makes them feel as if my door is open for them?
Right.
And that's where you really have to question
Yeah.
where, exactly that. It's like why do these guys think that I'm for them and I'm opening the door for them? Because the birds of a feather flock together.
Yeah, and
You
that's
know,
why I say that these people are on the same team. Like I think Joel Webbin like probably hates Corey Mahler at this point because Corey Mahler has called him a coward so many times for stealing his content, or because their content has overlapped so much over the past few months, which is really hilarious. But like they don't like each other, but I still say they're fighting on the same team because their follower base overlaps tremendously.
oh yeah,
That's
100%.
so bad. And then other ministries, like we just should not take these ministries seriously because they're fighting on the wrong team. It's exactly the way that I approached wokeness back in 2020. Like we should not associate with people who associate with, like, there were pastors who weren't necessarily woke themselves, but they went to woke conferences and they had woke speakers come to their church and they did all these other things, but maybe they weren't totally diving into critical race theory themselves. It's like, I still say you shouldn't take that pastor seriously. Like, even if they're not admitting to all the bad things themselves, if they associate with this crowd, they're worthless. Leave them.
And a good example of that is if think of pastors who are married, they're not gay, but yet they accept, tolerate, and welcome LGBT.
Right.
Now
Yeah.
the pastor is not gay; he's married, he's straight.
Sure. Right.
So I'm not saying he's gay and he's a part of LGBT, but I'm saying he's
Right.
compromising, he's tolerating, and he's welcoming wolves into his church, and that's what these pastors are doing. They may not be actual Nazis,
Yep.
but there are certainly revoiced pastors for Nazis.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that stuff that we need to watch out for, and
Yep.
we can't. I think we can't be reminded enough. Sometimes it feels like I'm beating a dead horse, but like these are the problems that we're dealing with today, and we need to be well equipped to deal with these.
100%. Yep.
That's probably a good wrapping up point.
Yeah, man, what a
Oh,
convo. We talked about everything.
oh man, it was great. Yeah, we
Yeah.
went way longer than I was expecting. That was a blast. Why
Yeah.
don't you, Pastor Lucas, tell everybody where they can find you?
Yeah, so you can follow me on Method Ministries. I'm on YouTube, Instagram, and X, and Facebook, and also Apple and Spotify too. So you can follow me there. And we do talks, debates, interviews, and more, as I always say.